Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Welcome to Workforce Wednesday, everybody. Our presenter today is Dr. Olga Escamilla.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and welcome everybody. So yes, my name is Olga Escamilla, and a little bit about myself. I always fail to introduce myself because I think, well, everybody knows me, and most of you do. So you can raise your hand if you know me already. But I'm just going to share a little bit about myself. So I've served in adult education for about 29 years, approximately 29 years. I began my career in adult education as a teacher's aide and progressively moved to GED instructor. I was an AB supervisor. Then I served as administrator for the Adult Education Literacy Professional Development Center for the South Central region when we had regions back in the day. And I've served as an AL program director at Southwest Texas Junior College, and I enjoyed that very much. And today I am a professional development specialist with TCAL, or Train PD at TCAL. I'm also the career pathway specialist as I serve in that role. And I also serve on the LEA team and on the training of trainers team. I'm a senior lecturer with the Department of Educational Leadership and Counseling at Texas A&M University, where I teach Masters of Adult Ed courses, and I've been doing that for the past 14 years. And I've served as the regional representative for COABE, and I currently serve as the president of Texas NOS, which is the Texas National Organization of Student Success. And I am the at-large representative for TALY. So with that said, welcome to Workforce Activities for Students Over 50, and my name is Olga Escamilla. So I just wanted to share that various content from this presentation is based on the AARP Foundation's publication, The 7 Strategies for 50-Plus Job Seekers, and information from TWC, from Teams, and Tableau. So our objective for this session today is we're going to share data on the student population over the age of 50 served by Texas AEL. And then we're going to share a definition of ageism and what it means to our older students looking for employment. And we're going to share about aspects one should know about aging students. And then I'll provide ideas that instructors can share with their students over 50 who are looking for employment. All right, so let's get started with our Texas AL student population over 50. And again, this data was derived from TWC's, from Teams, and Tableau. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you. This is our first piece of information. So this is adults in Texas AEL. This is our Teams population of 50 plus. So these are participants that are 50 years or older in Teams. So what we have here is this, 7,982, or 17%. And then this is all our other students. The orange is all our other students. So again, this is from Teams, 7,982 students over the age of 50. So this pie chart that you're seeing is adults in Texas, and this is from Tableau. And what Tableau does is Tableau gives us numbers of individuals 45 years or older. So we couldn't single out the 50 plus, but we could get 45 plus. So when we looked at the 45 years or older, we got 13,100 students here in the state of Texas at 45 years or older. So we went from 17% in Teams, and we added in the individuals' 5 years difference, and that brought us to 22%. So there is a small percentage change, almost double the number here because it was 7,000 and now it's 13,100. So according to the Health and Human Services. Texans over 50 and older are projected to number over 11 million by 2030. So right now we're in 2024. So in 6 years, we will have 11 million individuals over the age of 50. And of course, this is just a small number, right, of the total state population. But this number could increase as our 50 plus population increases. So just some thoughts. So I'm going to continue and we're going to talk a little bit about aging. We're going to talk about those changes and the compensation for those changes, because we have our students and we have to take into consideration what's happening with our students, right? So we have those specific effects of aging. So we have our changes here, and then we have some compensation that our students could potentially be using or may need based on these changes, right? So we have changes in vision, changes in hearing, cardiovascular, maybe respiratory, and even muscular and skeletal. So some of the compensations for these, and they're kind of listed side by side. We have for vision, sometimes our students have eyeglasses or maybe increased lighting, because sometimes we have bad lighting and that kind of hampers our ability to see certain things, right? So you could have eyeglasses or increased illumination. And then we have hearing. And for hearing, well, there may be hearing aids and closed captioning. Sometimes that kind of helps when we are in a virtual setting. If you have closed captions, you can read what is being said, and that kind of helps with that hearing issue. All right, then we have cardiovascular, and that could be medications, respiratory and musculoskeletal. So this one, increased time for learning. In terms of all of these things together, potentially they would need more time to learn certain things because of these effects of aging. And then we have maybe distance learning. If they are able to attend class at a distance, that might be beneficial to them potentially. All right, so let's continue. So let's talk a little bit more about specific effects of aging. And the first one is hearing. So hearing difficulty affects 25% of adults over the age of 65. And of course, we're talking about 50 plus, but as you get to this 65, things start happening before you get there. So this is saying 25% of adults over 65, and then 50% of males over the age of 70. So we have students at these ages because they're within the number that we shared. We just didn't pull them out specifically. And then maybe translation problems. So rapid speech is more difficult for older adults to decipher. And I can say that sometimes I catch myself speaking very quickly. So if we speak too fast, it's going to be hard for our students to capture everything that we're saying. So we need to consider our rate of speed in delivery and how we are maybe enunciating so that they can capture it. And then individuals over 50 usually have some impairment in discerning very soft sounds or high-pitched sounds. So if you speak too softly, they may not understand, they may not hear, they may not be able to understand what you're saying because they're not hearing everything because it's too soft. Or maybe even sometimes high-pitched sounds. Even these sounds happening outside of a classroom or outside of where you're having instruction, that can be disruptive, and our students of age may not be able to focus on what's being said because of those sounds that they're hearing. And I think this could become of consideration when you have those students that are taking classes at a distance or virtually, right? And you're teaching them via Zoom. Because I know that I have experienced that where a student would unmute to speak, and I could hear the TV going in the background. And granted, this student was probably a student of 50 years and older, but I could hear a TV blaring in the background. So how much of what I was saying was she really hearing because she has that other sound in the background? So these are things we have to take into consideration. And that is something that I set ground rules for after that piece was if you're going to be in the class, then you have to be in a quiet environment, because I don't see the learning happening.
A comment from Maria says, another thing to consider is digital learning for those over 50 because they did not necessarily grow up with technology like younger generations, and they may not know how to use a laptop or a computer or a mobile device.
And the beauty of our distance learning professional development center is they were able to provide everybody with North Star, which helps in terms of digital literacy and bringing our students up to speed. But we have our students go through digital literacy before they come into our virtual classes. So that is a plus because it helps them tremendously. So thank you for mentioning that. All right, let's continue. Memory. So as people get older, they appear to process information more slowly, or they seem less inclined to seriously consider materials they see as irrelevant or confusing. So if something is irrelevant or confusing, they may not take it seriously, potentially, because it's just like, okay, forget it. It's too much. Let's move on. Another piece of information on memory, transferring and retrieving. So as people get older, they have more problems transferring or encoding information into long-term memory, and then they have difficulty retrieving those memories. So these are all things that we know about individuals as they get older that are happening. I mentioned one thing that we could do for our students in terms of distance learning and the hearing and the listening while they're in class. So what are some things that we can do when we talk about the memory, when we talk about the hearing?
Repetition exercises or activities. Mike says consider their learning style, whether it's visual and or auditory. Turn on transcripts for online classes.
So I have a few suggestions for delivery of instruction. So in their research study, Simon and Schooley, they state that lifelong learning enhances the can-do factor in adults. So learning a new language or mastering another technology, it provides those expanded opportunities to make decisions and solve problems. And in turn, it enhances older adults' self-image, and especially in terms of meeting those daily life challenges. So presenting information that's meaningful and relevant, and that piece right there in terms of information being meaningful and relevant, that applies to all of our adult ed students. Don't they always want to know, why am I learning this and how am I going to use this? How is this relevant to what I need, right? And then you include aids such as mnemonic devices, maybe advanced organizers, checklists, and then adjust the rate of presenting information. Like I said, one of the things that I do is sometimes I catch myself and I'm going really, really fast. I think I was doing a presentation recently with my colleague, Wendy, and I was speaking very fast and someone privately messaged me and said, hey, slow down. Because, I was just on a roll. And yes, we have to take that into consideration that depending upon our population, we may need to just watch our presentation speed. How slow do we need to provide this information so that people can actually absorb what we're saying? All right, we have a few more. Present one idea at a time and summarize frequently to help with organization and retention. Again, we talked about how potentially it takes longer for them to commit things to long-term memory. So again, helping with that organization and retention of this information. And then encourage note-taking and provide an opportunity for our students to apply the information that they have learned. So how many of you teach the skill of note-taking? Because we could say take notes, but do our students know how to take notes? I mean, there are different types of note-taking, right? There's different ways to share that information about how to take notes. There's different ways to take notes. Do we teach our students how to take notes, or do we just assume that, hey, they're going to write something down that's going to help them? So yeah, it's important for us to teach these skills to our students, because depending upon when they left school and they're coming back, they may not have received these skills in their formal education before. All right, we've been talking about aging and what happens with our students, the effects, and some things that they can do about those effects, and what some of the things that we can do in instruction. So what is ageism? What is your definition, or what do you think ageism means?
We have discrimination based on someone's older age, bias based on age, discriminating against older adults based solely on perceived age and relation to ability.
So Michelle, I think you got it. I mean, you all got it. There's a bias, there's a discrimination based solely on the perceived age. Let me give you the definition. So age-based negative stereotyping could be a prejudice and discrimination. So older adults are stereotyped as difficult, senile, sickly, and possibly even stubborn. They face patronizing behavior, bullying even sometimes. I mentioned discrimination and abuse across settings, including employment and healthcare. So, according to some research by Packer, Chastain, and Nelson, ageism is a unique type of negative attitude. And I'm talking about ageism to older adults, because those younger individuals that are having that ageism against older adults will one day become old themselves. And one of the facts is that ageism is more pervasive than racism and sexism, just FYI. So Mike mentioned boomers versus Gen X. And one of the things that we're talking about today is our 50 plus and how ageism affects our 50 plus. So just remember, there is a opposite to this. We sometimes make comments about, oh, those younger generations, and we stereotype them in terms of, they want to be social influencers and they really don't want to work and things like that. So here we are doing reverse ageism to our younger generation. So it kind of goes both ways, but today we're talking about our older adults. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the 7 strategies for our job seekers over 50. So as I share about these 7 strategies for the job seekers over 50, think about how you, as an instructor, a navigator, or a peer, you can share these strategies and how they can be transformative as our older adults connect with other learners across communities and generations and begin to see themselves in unexpected ways. So as we work with our aging students, think about what we can share with them, but what we can learn from them too, because our students come to us with so much knowledge and so much experience. So it could be both ways, but we want to share these strategies to help our students move forward. All right, so let's talk about the first one. So targeted job search. So students should focus their job search on at least 2 areas at a time. So they're going to have different places where they want to look, right? So we want to provide our students with the resources to help them identify their skills and match them to jobs. So there's always that Work in Texas or My Texas Careers. And I think that My Texas Careers has a new app for smartphones that we can connect our students to if they don't have access to a computer. And also Workforce Center specialists that can assist our students in completing their profiles and maximizing their job search. So have the students target local open positions, maybe employers, industries, and part-time jobs. Okay, number 2, create personal marketing tools. What do we mean by personal marketing tools? Well, a cover letter. So it's important to review all of these aspects with our students. The resume that shows accomplishments, a thank you note or an email, and having a positive online presence. So this whole positive online presence, we're talking about marketing tools. And I was in a digital literacy content standards training, and we want to teach our students to create a positive online presence. Because what do you think that HR is going to do when an individual applies? Not all HRs, but there's HR, depending upon the position, they're going to go and they're going to look at your online presence. And I can tell you, I was applying for a job and I had LinkedIn. If somebody looks at your profile on LinkedIn, they'll tell you. So I had applied for a job and a notification came up that an individual had looked at my LinkedIn profile. And sure enough, that individual was the individual that I had sent my information to. So yes, even though we may think they're not looking, they are looking for your online presence and what you have out there. And it could be that if you do not have a good online presence, you're in the no pile.
And Christina adds that social media platforms, whether it's professional and personal, and anywhere you've been tagged.
Yeah, definitely. They're looking. So let's talk about the cover letter. There are certain details that need to be included in a cover letter. So what are they? Do we share that with our students? Or do we have somebody that comes and shares this with our students? So there's several ways. We could share it ourselves, or we could have someone else come and talk about it. And I know that there are individuals at the workforce centers that this information is what they cover. So technically we could have someone come and cover this information. So as we prepare, we talk to our students about what to include in that cover letter, discuss the format and what to include in the first paragraph, what to include in the middle paragraph, and what to include in the ending of your letter. So talk to students about what to avoid. For example, don't provide references that age you or any references to age. Instead, talk about years of experience or skills and positive outcomes from those previous positions, right? And you leave off certain dates, you leave off certain skills because you don't want to have to date yourself, right? So there's ways to be able to talk about your skills and about that experience without giving up age. So work with your students to create a resume that's going to get employers' attention, to tailor their resumes to specific jobs that they're applying for, and provide accomplishments related to those jobs, any successes that they've had related to what they're applying for. You also want to have them keep their resume to 2-page max and make sure that someone or even a few people, a few peers, a few individuals proofread for any errors. So in terms of those thank you notes, some of you might be saying a thank you note or an email. Yeah, maybe a thank you email to the interviewer. That may be that one thing that sets you apart, that helps you get that boost to get the job. So remind students that those notes should be sent within 24 to 48 hours to every individual who was in the interview, because sometimes it's not just one person, sometimes it's a group of individuals that interviewed, right? So the other important aspect would be, if you're planning on sending a thank you email, that you need to receive an email address for all of the individuals that need to receive that message.
And just a side note, Christina says that they are looking at your email address to see if it's professional or not.
Yes, that's another whole positive online or digital literacy skill. Yes, you don't want to have sweetcandy@gmail.com. No, make it professional. Conquer the job application and interview process. Teach your students to apply for jobs online, because for some, this may be a new process. And applying for jobs online is a full-time job in itself, because every job application system is different. Of course, they're similar in some way, but many of them are unique, and our students need to be prepared to be able to apply for jobs online. And also, sometimes when we're teaching our students about applying for jobs online, how many of you have experience applying for jobs online yourselves? Because there was one point where I had applied for several jobs online, and all of the systems were different. And one of the things that I learned is, if I wasn't fast enough, it would time me out. So we need to be prepared to share all of this information with our students, because what is one thing that maybe our students may not be so quick on the technology, and it's going to take them time to fill out their job application online. But one of the things that they need to understand or be aware of is, if they take too long, it's going to time them out and they're going to have to start all over. So that's a really important aspect to think about when talking to our students about applying for jobs online. And of course, they need to know how to post their resume online and how to email their resume, and also about using those keywords from the job postings. Because when our students put their application online, a lot of times the systems, the programs that they use are looking for keywords in our experience and our skills. So teaching them to use those keywords for job postings for their skills is very important. So also have a job history worksheet available when completing the application, so that they can copy and paste, because if they start typing it, it may take too long again and the system times you out. Now there is a comment.
Christina says, keep a log of passwords and usernames for each online application. It's great to notate when the application was submitted and for which position.
Yeah, definitely. When I was doing job search, I had a little notebook and I wrote down the website, and I'm sure there's electronic ways to do this too, but this was back in the day. And I wrote the username, password, and again, yeah, it's great to keep track of the applications that you submitted. So conquering the job application interview process, this is more about providing student tips for nailing the interview. So you want to have them read the job description, check out the company website, pay attention to the company's mission and vision, and prepare questions to ask the interviewer. So this is when they're getting ready for the interview. Because what is one of the questions that they ask you at potentially close to the end of the interview? They ask you, do you have any questions for us? So the applicants looked up the company website, we read through the job description, company's mission and vision. You have developed some questions potentially to ask at the interview. So you're going to ask those more pointed questions, and they're going to know that your students have done their homework in terms of the employer. So encourage your student to get new work experience and skills. Well, how do we do that? Well, they could get part-time work. They can even look for entry-level work. There's some other things listed here, but students, if they've lost their job or if they know they're going to be losing their job, they should start their job search as soon as they can and look for ways to stay connected to the workplace, to get new skills and stay up to date with their skills. So that loss of professional skills is a real concern for employers. So if we have individuals that haven't worked in a certain amount of time, our employers are going to think, well, do they really have the skills, right? So students should be encouraged to look for, again, part-time work, even volunteer, so that they can potentially turn into a full-time opportunity, because employers prefer to save time and money by moving volunteers to those current employees into new job openings. So another idea would be to get an entry-level work to get your foot in the door of a company, maybe a company that our students desire to work at, and then work on landing a position that pays better, being promoted to a different position once that they prove their skills, right? So in today's job market, it's important to always be learning and improving your skills. So those community colleges often offer continuing education. There are websites that offer free training, such as gcflearnfree.org. And then we refer our students to distance learning. So every program has a free license for North Star, and I kind of mentioned that earlier, right? So this is a great start to get them into some training or get them some continued education that's going to help them to improve their technology for future jobs. One of the best ways to find a job is by word of mouth, through referrals from people you know. In other words, networking with friends or colleagues or acquaintances and maybe former coworkers. So another factor is that most jobs are not advertised. They're filled by word of mouth. So this is why many people are meeting people who know people is the best way to find a job. So never overlook an opportunity to make a contact, right? So meet people who know people. Employers want to avoid hiring and training new employees who are not suitable for the job. So they increasingly rely on people they know and trust to refer qualified candidates. So this is one thing, again, encourage your students to network and encourage them not to fall out of touch with friends that they've worked with or those that they have a professional relationship with. So these are the people who are already familiar with their skills and their work ethic, and they could give them a good referral. Also, refer students to the local workforce center to find out when and where the job fairs are going to be occurring. Job fairs are a good way to make a lasting impression on those that are looking for employees. Encourage your students to connect with organizations that find job candidates for employers. So these are those employment agencies, right? We have our workforce solution offices or American Job Centers, those career one-stops that can help our students with job search. There's also, again, those staffing agencies that might be able to help our students over 50 find those part-time jobs or those entry-level jobs to make that connection to be able to move into other positions. There's also the Senior Community Service Employment Program, the SCSEP. Now, those are rare, but they do exist. And I do have a website that says they are an employment program that offers job experience to those that are aging. So one of the things with this one is, back when I was a high school equivalency teacher at a workforce center, we had a lady who worked for the SCESP, and she got that job. She was a senior and she worked as a receptionist. She was very helpful. And this program paid her. So that kind of helps those older workers get that experience and have a job, make a little bit of money. So it's very helpful. But keeping this in mind, remind your students that they should never pay for services to connect them to a job. Reputable agencies are paid by the employer, not by the job seeker. So let them know that they can always check the company's record with the Better Business Bureau at www.bbb.org to see if the organization is legitimate. Because remember, they should never have to pay to get a job. All right, let's continue. So encourage your students to take time to focus on themselves. So some ideas could be creating a support system, staying motivated, taking time to recharge and refocus, connecting with other job seekers, and then seeking mental health support if necessary, because our employers want to hire people who have the ability to manage their personal feelings and reactions to challenges on the job and in life. So prepare your students to make their best impression by taking good care of themselves. Because as I mentioned, looking for a job is a full-time job in itself. So it may take a toll on our students, especially their self-esteem when they're applying for jobs and then they may not be getting those jobs. So that takes a toll on an individual. So encourage your students to talk to friends or a counselor to process their feelings about losing a job or getting a new one, and to surround themselves with positivity or people that are going to help them take on the challenge. Also, provide our students with positivity, positive affirmations even, and you can help your students resist that temptation to focus on the negatives, right? Have them list positive things in their life, big and small, and encourage them to focus on those things. Promote healthy diet and healthy eating habits, and remind the students to get plenty of sleep and take plenty of time for hobby or plan regular activities, even if it's just taking a walk. And also remind them that there are other people who are looking for work just like them, and other job seekers can be a source of encouragement, support, and job leads. So being around other job seekers can be energizing and motivating, and it might help our students keep them on track during their job search. So their mental health plays a very important role in their overall well-being. So if they're experiencing like fatigue or decreased energy or feelings of guilt or excessive sleeping, to name a few, have them seek professional support. Again, it's okay. So to compete in the challenging job market, our students should be prepared to change right along with it. So no one plans on losing a job. So it's important to have a plan for gaining the next one. So we should be providing our students with the skills and information so that they can take control of their job hunt. So by preparing your students and sharing these 7 strategies, you can help them find their place in today's job market. The last thing I have to say is share those 7 SMART strategies with your students. So are there any questions at this time?
Linda just posted a link to the AARP job board, and then a couple other good websites, retiredbrains.com, workforce50.com, seniorsforhire.org.
So thank y'all very much. And I hope that you will pass on all this information to your students 50 plus to help them stay in the job force.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.